Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm joined as always by Sean Martin. Good morning, Sean. How are you doing?
Not bad, Tony. Slightly better than yesterday.
Slightly, you're on the mend. That's good to hear. Now today, as is we're wont during international break, we're going to throw open to comments, Sean, and questions from those that are tuning in. We did it the last time and it worked out quite successfully, but I wrote a column on the Celtic Way today just to kick us off to say as early as November, Sean, I'm tipping Kyogo to sweep the boards at the Footballer of the Year. Might be highly controversial, but I think he's the best player in Scotland by quite some considerable distance. Your thoughts, Sean? Do you concur, or do you think there's still a long way to go for other candidates to emerge?
Still a long way to go, I think, and I think we're obviously going to be doing our updated power rankings for Celtic performances, which is based on the ratings that they get on the website. So totally our own fault, depending who's up or who's down. And I wouldn't rule out someone else pushing Kyogo up the top there. I'm thinking of a certain wee Portuguese man.
Yeah, that's very true.
I think his influence has been unbelievable since he joined as well. But I take your point, and I think there's a thing, I quite like basketball and stuff in the American sports, and there's a phrase over there which is MVP, most valuable player, which isn't necessarily always the best player, if you know what I mean. It's not always necessarily the most informed player. And I think you could make a case that Kyogo, since his arrival, has been the most valuable player to Celtic and for any team in the league, with the effect that he's had and the tone that he sets and his own ability as well, obviously, but the effect that it has on the rest of the team when he's on and when he's playing in that central role. Could you
bracket Anthony Ralston in the MVP category, Sean?
Once he gets in a Scotland conversation, possibly.
Well, as I say, I just think that the impact that Kyogo's had since he came in has been utterly breathtaking. You know, and I'm talking about the impact both on and off the park. Mm-hmm. You know, the fans have just warmed to him and not all for his scoring goals ability, which he really has, but different things we spoke about, rubbing Ralston's knee, picking up the litter, high-fiving his fellow players and taking videos of them when he was out injured, and said himself that he thinks Kyogo has been an infectious character in the dressing room, and I think that's a good word. He is infectious.
So...
You
see the Halloween prank video as well?
Yeah.
The reaction that every single one of them to a man had when they realised it was Kyogo was good. That was a positive one as well. Most of them, funnily enough, I think he's taking this on board on the pitch as much as off it. Most of them says to him, "You need to be more aggressive. You need to be more scary. It's not just hello. You need to try and scare us." Because on the pitch, he's obviously we've talked yesterday about when we were asked if he was feigning injury and stuff. But there's also I think you saw it at the start anyway when people were saying he's a wee bit lightweight and stuff. I say people, mostly non-Celtic fans, were saying he's a wee bit lightweight. How's he going to cope? That kind of thing. He does have a wee bit of bite to him in terms of how he presses, how he likes to kind of pressurise the defenders, and he has that side to him, which obviously is why he sets the tone when he's up front. But he's obviously developed this wee, you'll see with the clips on Twitter and stuff, this wee kind of get it right up you mentality if he scores against a defender, or if the team scores against a defender that's been giving him the treatment as well. And I think that can only benefit him as well going forward.
So Frank Brennan comes in and says to me, still a very long way to go for sure, but with Kyogo with at front of the queue and not too far behind him, Jota. That's what you were saying, Sean. And Alan Boyne comes in and says MVP should go to Big Ange. Well, that's a fair shout as well, I suppose. Now, if you've just tuned in, we are doing what we did the last international break, and we're throwing it open to the floor to questions from the contributors and subscribers. If you've got a question about Celtic, throw it open to me and Sean, and we'll do our level best to give you an open and honest answer. I was kicked off by myself saying on the Celtic Way this morning, I've written an article saying that Kyogo's already my Scottish Footballer of the Year. Highly controversial, possibly, but there you go. Now, Gunnar Matt comes in here, Sean, he says, Jota's first goal offside and Dundee denied a Stonewall penalty with Vickers' shot pull could well have been 3-3. Well, I think
could well have been 6-3 as well.
I think the score at that point was 4-2, wasn't it?
The shot pull. Shot pull, I think so. I mean, it could have been given. It wasn't, luckily for Celtic. Jota's goal, I don't think that was offside, do you?
Don't think so, because it's came back off the post and he's ran in, hasn't he? So I would have to see that again. Celtic Supporters Podcast said after Stick Ralston took myself included, he's my player of the year so far. And Charles, he said, and Ralston, what a team. And then Simon Thomas comes in. The Bulls need to negotiate a new contract with Ange before a team down south snaps him up. Do you subscribe to that?
It's a rolling contract, isn't it? I think it's.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry too much about it at this early juncture, but I think I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him stay because I think he's been great value. One way or the other so far, and I think it's always going to be an interesting ride with Ange at the helm anyway. So I sign him up.
Yeah, and Charles Reid agrees with that. He says agreed. And Joe Harley asks, how many players do we need in January? Sean, how many do you think?
A good few still. I think the only thing that's changed since I took stock of the transfer window when it shut at the end of August and said about the squad depth being really worrying is that there's a few players back from injury, but it doesn't change the fact that the squad depth is still worrying, and also some of the players that are there, how much they actually suit what's going on at the club at the moment for the team. But I think definitely they've struggled to replace Ryan Christie in the middle, and the fact that he's a versatile character. They've not struggled to replicate him out wide, obviously, because out wide they've actually been playing quite well, and they've got a few options now with Forrest coming back. But I think the kind of box to box aspect, to be able to put someone like that in the middle of the park, they need someone like that. Probably, could you argue another striker? Depends what you think is going to happen with Ayeti, I suppose. Lest we forget that Griffiths is away on loan as well, but I think another striker. Again, if Bolingoli leaves because he looks as if he's been frozen out again, then you're looking at maybe another left back. Potentially, depends what you think is going to happen with Montgomery's game time, because I think Taylor will still be first choice when he comes back. I think at least 4 players. What about yourself?
Yeah, but I wouldn't disagree with that. At least 4. I know we spoke about the 2 that he's targeted yesterday, Hatate and Maeda, and if he gets them in, I think he'll be pretty happy. But the ones that you've mentioned as well, or the roles or the positions that you've mentioned, I think if he can get 4 in, I think he'd be a happy man. And before I say anything else, don't be adjusting your set. It's just temporary interference with the shirt, in case anybody's wondering. Okay, Ian Crawford comes in and says, front 3 are outstanding this season, Kyogo and Jota especially. Kyogo's a great find by Ange. Yep, I think we're all...
He scored against them. He terrorised them over in Japan, as far as I'm aware. So that's why I fancy this. I fancy this guy.
I think we are 3 players away from being a top European team. Do you agree? Sean, do you agree with that? 3 players away from being a top European team?
Team possibly squad-wise, though, I still think it's 3 or 4, maybe even 5. I think it's another window and then possibly another one.
Celtic Supporters Podcast saying the left back, centre back, centre forward, and a creative midfielder, which is not short of what you just said there yourself as well. Frank Brennan comes in now, Sean, and he says it's 2021. Celtic are a completely international, diverse football club, and we're at the time of year when we only completely embarrass ourselves over the Poppy issue. So when will it be sorted? You got any thoughts on that, Sean?
I'll pass on that one. Actually, Tony, I think the Poppy issue. I certainly see what he's getting at, but I think there's more nuance to it than just Celtic fans embarrassing themselves. I think there's a certain embarrassment that comes with the jingoism that comes around every year as well. So I think there's 2 sides to that one. But
morning, lads. There's an argument for Jota. We needed leaders, and he's been one on the park, and also, by the way, he speaks off the park. Agree with that, actually. Yeah. He's very...
He does the media quite a bit, I think.
Yes.
He's out quite a bit. But...
And the slow news do international breaks in eternity. Edward, try sitting in this seat. And then he says, love to see the merch sales in Australia and Japan for Celtic gear. Pedro, that's a good point. I think they'll be doing a roaring trade as well. And Peter comes in, Peter... Celtic need 5 players, a left back, a defensive midfielder, a central midfielder, centre forward, and a second goalkeeper. Yep, I think that's kind of bog standard what most Celtic supporters think as well, don't they?
I think the middle of Hart, don't they? I mean, if there's an injury to Joe Hart, Scott Bain, I think we all agreed his ideal role was as the deputy rather than the starting goalkeeper. So filling in for a few games would be fine. I don't necessarily want to see him as the number 1. Whether that means that you don't actually need a second goalkeeper, it would depend on on the severity of Hart's injury if it was an injury. So no, I think there's a point there, but I think it would depend on what happened to Hart first and foremost. If he's going to be out for some considerable time, I think you're essentially looking for another first choice goalkeeper. Otherwise, I think for a few games, then you're happy enough with Bain covering.
Now, Alex Shinder comes in and says, do you think George's Giakoumakis will settle and come good? Now, I've got a theory. We spoke about Giakoumakis yesterday, and we thought maybe he was trying too hard to impress. You seem to agree with that, Sean, but he just maybe needs to relax on it a bit. And, you don't score 26 goals in the Eredivisie if you're not a good footballer. So he's got off to an indifferent start, hasn't he? Scored the goal against St Johnstone and then missed a penalty against Levy. So up and down, and I think that's what you're going to have with strikers, aren't you?
I think so. I mentioned it yesterday as well. I do agree with you. I think he was kind of looked as if he was maybe devoid a wee bit of confidence. How much of that was to do with the penalty, I don't know. But I did say I want more from him than simply being an effective guy to throw on to see out a game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
he was good at that. Don't get me wrong. Ferencváros, both games he played his role well, taking the ball in, winning some fouls, breaking up any momentum that they might have got towards the end of the game. But you want to see more from him, given his record in the Netherlands, and given the fact that he's got the number 7 jersey as well. Really.
Now Simon Thomas comes in. Mitch Langerak would be a good second keeper. Currently best keeper in Japan. We'll maybe have a look at him, Sean, on the various platforms that we can use.
I think he's in his 30s though, so I don't know if if he did say for second keeper, right enough. So I mean that's still about 6. What if he's 32, 33, 6-7 years left?
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah, Kyogo, Jota, Ralston, Hart. I think Kyogo's a safe bet. I think he's talking about the Player of the Year. I would safely say so. And Jamie Young above says, morning guys, Jota always get rolled out to the press, but he loves it. Well, he seems to be loving it, doesn't he? He's everything about Jota just now, everything he touches turning to gold, and he seems to have found a football home. Here's hoping he decides
he's found a freedom.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you did there. Yes, indeed. Yes, what can you say? The young gun has found a freedom. There you go. Yeah, there we are. Oh, they're all coming out now, Sean. Well done. But as I say, guys, keep those comments coming in. Keep the conversation going, because we like to turn it over to you guys to set an agenda in International Week, because as one of the contributors said, International Week lasts for an eternity, and it certainly seems to feel like that. But if you've got anything else on your mind Celtic wise, give us a shout. James Rees comes in with a left field one, Sean. Leeds, just goes Leeds. Well, there you go. Thanks for that, James.
I'll throw one to you, Tony. I was going to throw this in yesterday. It's when people are saying about left backs and maybe another centre back and stuff. I don't actually know if another centre back is feasible, given that Julian's still to come back. Scales can play centre back. Welsh is obviously shown he's the main deputy and stuff. But Sunday was Celtic's 8th game this season, conceding 2 or more goals. Now, obviously, the obvious response to that is that they've still got the best defence statistically in the league, and they do. Like, they've conceded the fewest. But they've also kept 10 clean sheets in total, and obviously it's skewed by Europe as well when you think on it. Nonetheless, conceding 2 or more 8 times already with the 10 clean sheets, it's almost you either keep a clean sheet or you concede twice, which I don't know if it's fair. I don't know if it necessarily reflects how well they're playing in defence or not, because it's obviously when you're in defence for Celtic, especially under Ange, there's more than just defending to think about. You need to think the build-up play. You need to think everything else. You need to cover for the fullbacks coming inside as well if there's the gap, all that kind of thing. So, given that, do you think that means much, or do you think it's more a reflection of where they were earlier in the season?
I think it's a definite reflection of where they were earlier in the season, without a doubt. You know, as you say, statistics can be skewed, can't they? You know, to suit any particular agenda, but you just have to look at them now. And you know, David Bradley comes in. You're Sean, I think Ralston's a good shout for player of the season so far. Ralston's playing his part in that defence. You know that you're mentioning, which he wasn't, you know, at the earlier part of the season. You know, so and Gunnar Matt comes in. It's criminal that O'Donnell gets in Scotland score before Ralston this year, to be honest. So if you're talking about the defence, I mean, Celtic's got the meanest defence in the Premiership. you know. Yet there's still, you've mentioned it there, we touched upon it yesterday, there's still deficiencies there, isn't there?
There is, but at least there's definitely progress. I mean, we have at various points criticised Starfelt. I think before his injury, he was starting to come onto a bit of a better game. I think the injury came at a really bad time for him, actually. I think he was starting to look a bit more settled. Ralston, what more can you say about him than we haven't already said? You wrote the piece about him before the weekend, or before the Ferencváros game, and he's come up with 2 performances in a row that's justified it. Come on, my stone, was it you said?
Yes, come on, my stone.
Juranovic, even, I mean, I still don't think he's the answer at left back. I think he's been playing well enough at left back, but I'd rather see Greg Taylor come back in when fit and provide the kind of the natural left-footedness, the natural overlap. But there's
on the subject of left back, Sean, Jamie Young comes in, Hatate for left back, please. So
when I looked at him in September, which was obviously just hypothetical, I was just looking at people that might fit Ange's bill, if you want to put it that way. I think he would fit more the Ryan Christie mould than left back, Hatate. He's been playing centre mid more than any other position the last wee while, and the kind of thing that he brings to the team, the bite, the energy. I saw him more as a replacement for the kind of Christie attributes that we're missing at the moment. But the fact that he's versatile enough, he's actually right-footed, but he's versatile enough to play on either flank, whether that's at the back or whether he plays in the middle. If it is to be Hatate, then I think he would be a valuable addition, by all accounts.
Yep, indeed, I think a lot of people agree with you. Celtic Taylor, no way, man. Can't understand how people rate this boy hopeless. Again, it's all about opinions, isn't it? So, right. You've mentioned there that Taylor is one of those players who will come back into the Celtic team, or certainly try and force his way back into the reckoning. But Juranovic has done very well since he's gone to left back, and he's looking every inch a Croatian international footballer. But as you've alluded to there, it's not his natural position. But Tony Ralston at this moment's on fire. So
that's true. It's you would rather have 2 informed right backs than none.
Yep.
So I think Juranovic, you can tell he used to be a midfielder when he was younger. Yes. I think with the composure that he's got in the ball, and he doesn't. There's not all defenders, but there's a tendency with defenders that when you're passing the ball about, as Celtic are want to do sometimes, in front of the opposition, that they can get a wee bit antsy because they don't really want to be on the ball as often. I think he just embraces it. I think he will look to get forward. He'll look to link up with Jota, which I thought he'd done well. And I think he does well despite what I said about him not really offering the overlap capabilities that the likes of Taylor would. But I think I would rather have 2 informed right backs to try and get in a team than have no informed right backs.
Well, Bradley comes in. I don't think Taylor is Celtic class, and I don't rate him on the ball. And no way good enough for Europe. Again, that's David's opinion. That's fair enough. And Simon Thomason, I wouldn't write off Taylor just yet. Many wrote off Ralston, and look how he's improved. That's a fair point as well. And Jamie Young, a lot of the goals we've conceded have been freak goals and not necessarily bad goals.
That's a decent point. Like, there is a certain, and I feel as if I'm writing it every other week when I do the stats report, the data report, which is a lot of the goals are avoidable. A lot of the goals, it's either like the Ferencváros second one, obviously you want somebody to come out and close them down, but the actual strike itself was a perler. Saturday, both of those goals could have been avoided. Joe Hart maybe not coming for the cross for the second one, or even McGregor pressurising the cross before it comes in. And the first one, the defence was very static, I thought, and Turnbull get beat too easily. I suppose you could argue, well, these things happen in a game of football. So is it avoidable if it happened? And I take that point. But I do think that a lot of times this season, I think Jamie's got a good point, a lot of times this season, some of the goals Celtic have conceded has been that you shouldn't really have been conceding a goal like that kind of thing. Yeah,
I mean, we mentioned it yesterday, they've been preventable and avoidable, as you've said. So, but that's the nature of, the nature of football, isn't it? You're going to concede goals like that. But I think if Celtic defensively look back and go through all the goals, then there are ones that I think they could probably have done better.
Right.
I
think there's also the point that Simon made there. I think Taylor's already offered more than obviously what Ralston had at the start of the season and what he had in his sporadic appearances. So I think it might be unfair to kind of conflate the two. given Taylor had already saw off the challenges of a couple of left backs to become the first choice. But I do take the point that there's perhaps already people have made their minds up about Taylor as well. And I think the fact that Ange Postecoglou has clearly been behind the new deal for him and has clearly spoke publicly about the way that he's adapted and the way that he's applied himself. But then I would argue that Taylor was never going to be the kind of player that you would think wouldn't apply himself. That is the one thing that he always has in his positive column. He's a hard worker. He is the kind of player that if you tell him what you want him to do, he'll go out and he'll absolutely try and do it to the best of his ability. Sometimes that is not enough. I'd agree with that. Sometimes it's not enough, but I think for most of the time it is. And I still think he's quite underrated by a lot of the support.
I think Taylor, like Ralston, will divide opinion, but if Ange wants to offer them a new deal and he offered Ralston a new deal, then he clearly sees something in him. And Will McMillan comes in there and says, Ange must see something in Taylor that we don't. Well, if that's the case, then you'd back the manager. And as he's done, and so far, so good with the manager. And on that note, that's over 20 minutes, Sean, that we've been speaking about. Thanks to everybody for their contribution. And I know some of the comments were about non-football related issues, and we aren't ducking those issues. We just like to try and keep it all about the football, guys. So if you're disappointed with that, then that's fair enough. But we like on this podcast especially to keep it all about the football. So, but thanks for your contribution. We do value it, and we value the fact that you subscribe. And if you want to subscribe for top quality journalism covering the club you love, it's £1 a month for the first 2 months. And if you are watching on YouTube, remember and hit the subscribe button. But as I say, we like a good debate about the football, because that's what it's all about for all of us, all the Celtic supporters out there that watch. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your contribution, Sean.
Cheers, Tony.